Okay. I hope you guys had a great lunch. My name is Alex Baker. I am a retail strategist from the Nordics. And for the next 30 minutes, I'll be taking you on a journey on why AI is transforming the whole industry and how we can actually adapt as an organization to understand those waves. I'm going to start off by showing you a short video.
Change the world for businesses and customers forever. The first phase of digital transformation was all about making information accessible. The second phase was about mobiles and social media and how they connect people. This third phase is about a world of artificial intelligence. Leading companies are already moving from a mobile-first to an AI-first strategy. And it's making technology cooler than ever before. But make no mistake, it's not about the evolution in technology. It's about technology changing the expectations of customers fast. And if you're not already thinking about your customers the day after tomorrow, you're at risk of being left behind. For customers, the third phase of digitalization will be fantastic. Without doing anything, customers will arrive in a world of faster than real-time
Apologies for the
service.
sound. I realize that you will see anyway the three shifts that we're talking about. We're talking about the first big shift that happened on the internet and desktop. And then when companies later on also became digital first, we moved to the mobile. And now finally how AI is transforming all platforms and channels, but most essentially us as human beings. So why listen to me? I have the pleasure of working within the whole spectrum of the ecosystem. So both as a retailer, as a vendor, as a community leader, but most importantly as an educator. I create a lot of content for different organizations, retailers, industry platforms, but also working closely with vendors, helping them understand why trends are so important for us as an organization to move forward. I also run a podcast at the largest retail platform in the Nordics every second week, where we discuss retail trends and events that are affecting the industry. Today we'll go through several topics, but we're going to talk, of course, about agentic commerce. We're going to talk about, obviously, since we're here, supply chain and some small implications on this industry. We're going to talk about leadership, and of course, we're going to talk about innovation. But most importantly, if you just kind of try to extract one thing that my whole presentation is going through from different perspectives, we're going to talk about courage and why courage is the most important capability today, both for us as human beings in a very volatile time, but also for organizations. So I recently came from New York and one of the largest trade shows called the National Retail Federation. And the topic this year was, without any surprise, agentic commerce and how that affects our everyday life and also us as organizations. One of the greatest examples was mentioned by Microsoft. And they were talking about the three different phases that companies are going through to reach that sense of excellence. And many of the companies today are primarily at the first or the second stage. So the first stage is where humans starts utilizing AI with an assistant. It might be your watch, it might be your ChatGPT, your Perplexity, your Gemini. The next phase when organizations try to level up is that now we're starting to use agents in a way, but still on a better level, meaning now we are instructing the agents to do certain tasks for us, see it as a digital colleague. And the stage we want to reach is where we can actually now set up teams that are working for us in our organization, but as agents. So basically we set up a language for them, we set up directions, but the teams are running the projects for us. Our job is mainly to monitor, to steer, but the teams now suddenly are building that growth, that capability that makes us take that lead within our industry. And of course, there's no need for me to share with you, because I know that a lot of you are already working with this today, why the necessity of using agentic commerce as a foundation in your organizations. both when it comes to, of course, in the commerce section, if it's e-com, if it's for utilizing the physical stores with the best capabilities, but also across the organizations. What departments today could use a colleague, could use several colleagues to another level where we haven't seen before? And I mean, AI for the past few years, it's matured, and it has matured even more and more and more to the level that within the next 4 years, we're going to see that a large chunk of the spend online will be led by agents. And this is actually about a shift for us as leaders to go from a reactive versus a proactive way of working. And when it comes to, of course, logistics as well, we see here what benefits agents have to that sector. We see that now we're able to build capabilities that are around the clock. We can work with trend prediction. We can work with automation in a way that we haven't been able to before. And I'm not just talking about forecasting it. I'm talking about working with predictive analytics, with predictive ways of working, with predictive sets of processes in the organizations. And of course, we also have now ways when it comes to logistics and last mile delivery where agents and AI are able to increase that in a way that we haven't seen before. One very interesting shift, and let's remember that most markets have their local tendencies. They have the locals' most important stickiness factors. As for Asia, as for the GCC, we see that convenience is one of the drivers. We see that hyper convenience, even to that sense, is something that the consumer is demanding. And that, of course, enables companies to take the lead by building these services that are crucial, such as dark stores, such as quick commerce setups. And there is actually one very interesting example. I'm sure many of you have already seen it, but a lot of the hyper modern technology and concepts we find in Asia. And this is actually HippoFresh, one of the leading grocery chains in Asia that is, of course, also owned by Alibaba. So there's a lot of capabilities from that mother company. But they've been working for years now. Forget about the agentic rise that we see now. They've been working with years in understanding how can we work with forecasting just-in-time deliveries. So what they have is trucks driving around, so they're able to deliver within 30 minutes. So trucks, based on analytics, these are the products that are most likely to be purchased or ordered in this area. How can we then, from the truck, deliver with a motorcycle within 30 minutes? So once again, now with the rise of the intelligence that AI and agents are enabling our organizations, how can we use that to actually take the lead from our industry, take the lead from our competitors? We also see in volatile times that I'm sure a lot of you agree with me when it looks to policy, when it looks to trade wars, that companies are looking into how can we either cut costs or increase our profits. And a lot of companies today within retail are looking into the amazing opportunities of retail media. And I'm quite involved in retail media. I'm not going to talk a lot about that today at all, but basically enabling your data, once again, to utilize that relationship you have with your consumer to offer a new type of partnership. So a lot of business-to-consumer companies with the retail media, they now start offering a business-to-business offering because they're sitting on the gold. So which channels are we offering now new types of businesses to? Dubai is, of course, after a few years, very well known for the huge internet phenomena as Dubai chocolate. For me in my job that is able to travel around the world, I haven't been to one place, even at this rural farmer's market in the US that I went to with my family a couple of weeks ago. Even there, in a booth, they're selling a Dubai chocolate-inspired smoothie. They're selling Dubai chocolate-inspired crepes. So understanding internet phenomena, which AI also enables, help us as organizations predict what are the current trends. I mean, I'm not young anymore. What are the kids looking at? What is Gen Z saying? What is even Gen Alpha saying? And of course, in these times where we have a very volatile world, where we don't know what routes we should plan tomorrow when it comes to our supply chain, we don't know what prices are we able to keep up because of the tariffs, we need to understand how AI can help us in leveraging trends. How many of you here are well aware with the Labubu trend? Yeah, there's a few. So we realize as well how these kind of concepts can create that hype and phenomena. I visited one of their stores in Amsterdam a couple of months ago, and being able to see how can you build something that is more like a VIP club, even though they're selling a commodity. And how can something start off by being targeting a younger audience while looking into every market adapted in a different way. So in South Korea, where this was originated, it's actually mothers that buy these accessories and then add them to their luxury items. So help us understand, with the help of AI, how can we pick and choose trends that are interesting for us as an organization to see how should we develop our offering. Just briefly, we see three big trends when it comes to what shifts will happen within the retail industry if we look to it from a supply chain perspective. And the first one is this mindset of ecosystems. There's no longer a winning path in trying to conquer the consumer ourselves, rather than in going into alliances with partners. And we also see that the quality of data becomes even more crucial. So for the last 10, 15 years, everyone has been talking about data being the new gold or the new oil. But the quality of data today, when we start training agents, when we start building AI capabilities, become even more crucial. And it's not the amount of data, but it's the quality of data. And then also, finally, coming from the Nordics, having a Swedish heritage, we need to understand as well that circularity or sustainability is no longer a nice add-on in the annual report. It's something that consumers are requiring. It's something that governments and cities are starting to show to prove the quality of life. So we need to also be able to now implement sustainable qualities within our organization and within our partnerships. When it comes to AI, unfortunately, there's been a lot of lucky people that have been trying to mine this gold mine. Although the majority of AI projects, they fail. So in a recent study last year from MIT, it was conducted that 95% of all AI projects, and specifically they looked into Gen AI, fail. And that's a quite big number, and I can promise you the market cap of that is even bigger. We're talking the 3-digit billions. But what might surprise you is that it's not because of the technology, because once again, technology is like a knife. It can be used for good, it can be used for bad. The most important things that this study conducted was that, if I would break it down in one learning instead of these 10, is that technology is a tool. Those organizations that succeeded, the 5%, they were working with leadership. They were working with utilizing what business goals are we moving, what people do we need to get involved. So in the core, it's about people management, it's about transformation. And they were working clearly, if we go back to the quality of data, they were working clearly with finding a specific project with a business goal, and then utilizing that data and working with startup methodology, working with a lean mindset. I work with trends and trend reporting on a daily basis. And to be able to observe that for any person, this is a very interesting tool. Understanding trends and what curves trends might have. Everyone here is aware of the pandemic. Everyone here is aware of trade wars, for examples, or Pokemon Go, or the rise of augmented reality. When we understand how trends normally live out, we can also start forecasting what is this trend or what is this phenomenon meaning for my business. And of course, AI is a very popular topic. It might be the most popular topic regardless of industry, regardless of what we talk about in society. Today, AI is affecting us in a way that is never seen before. The previous CEO of IKEA, he said something that was really interesting. He said that in these times, we're not able to know which destination we're going towards, right? But the Northern Star for organizations today and forward has to be that curiosity and that ways of thinking that we're not done. We keep going on that journey and we keep exploring new things. And I believe that a lot of organizations today that we see are trailblazers or dynamic, they have shifted their ways of working into having this more curious leadership. Of course, IKEA is not the company that it used to be when it started 80 years ago. Today, they're one of the most agile companies, and I'm not saying that as a Swede. They've been utilizing technology in a way and an innovation to be able to try new concepts. So from having these big IKEA stores to also starting to create more AAA concepts, city locations, from Oxford Street to central Stockholm to other places, where they can meet the customers where they are, where they can help the customer, of course, to find and solve their problem. When they launched their augmented reality solution a couple of years ago, they helped the customers with that problem of, I love that furniture, but how would it look in my house? So innovation is about finding that problem that your consumer is really struggling with and solving it. This is a repetition from the video. Basically, we see three shifts now within retail. And that is going from what we said about 20 years ago, when companies went from an analog world, a physical world, into the digital world. So getting out on the internet, basically. The second shift happened a few years later, was everyone was obsessed with becoming mobile first. How can we be in the phone? How can we be available for the consumer where they are? And now we see that a lot of organizations, and I say this because I also represented transformation agencies where we work with retailers, top management, to help them now shift. It's great that they've been working with AI, it's great that they have AI capabilities, but how are we doing that across the organization? How are we building that for the company to become AI first? A very dear person to me passed away a few years ago, so I was very blessed to be able to study under Professor Clayton Christensen. He was the founder of the term disruptive innovation. He was a professor at Harvard, and in the 90s he was working with a lot of the big brands in the US, from HP to McDonald's. And I'm not going to have time to share the McDonald's example today, even though I love it and it's my favorite. But I really recommend you to go on YouTube and make a note to see the McDonald's job to be done milkshake example. Because he built the foundation for how can companies understand the problem they're solving or the problem that the consumer is hiring your organization to solve. And what he said is innovation is a process. It's not just something you do overnight. So the core to build innovation capabilities internally is to realize that we're investing long term rather than having people like myself coming in, working for a few times and then leaving. So basically what we do is that we build innovation capabilities for organizations so they can utilize the power they have. Because companies need to harness both external qualities, but most likely the customer-centric, the people that are close to the consumer. They're the ones sitting with the knowledge. And he also talked about two needs, and that's why you see the van shoe over there. So we buy things as human beings based on an emotional need and a practical need. So for example, I did not buy these shoes because I had a practical need. I could have bought any shoes. I bought these shoes from an emotional need because I thought those shoes look way crazier than my other quite conservative outfit. So when we understand that consumers very often buy things from an emotional perspective, that also enables us to do things a bit different. Job to be done is his framework. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. The consumer is not buying your electric tool. The consumer is buying your service to make that hole in the wall. How can we put ourselves in that situation so we realize that we're not just competing with our industry peers? When the consumer is deciding to buy from us, he or she has been going through the whole spectrum. If they're buying a fridge, for example, my competitors are not only electronic businesses or other fridge companies. They might consider that fridge or a holiday. So we need to understand what need are we solving for them. And most importantly, in this era, we need to understand what are we doing to utilize AI for us. The simple way for this, I know people like simple things, there's a 3-step framework that we talk about often for big companies that want to work with innovation. And that is to collaborate with more dynamic companies, younger companies. Eventually they end up investing many times, and in the end, if we look at the big companies like LVMH or other ones, they tend to acquire them. So remember, as a big company, as an incumbent, as an industry leader, you've reached where you are because you've done things very good. But that level of innovation that still needs to happen, they tend not to have time or priorities for that. AI, of course, is also affecting the industry in many ways, and businesses cross-functionally, as I mentioned. So there's no department today that is not are hopefully not utilizing AI, from purchasing to marketing to sales to supply chain. And most importantly, what I've been very blessed with is also introducing an AI colleague to the management team. How can we also add that extra colleague to companies so we can have an unbiased, hopefully, but we can have a new voice that is able to do things that we're not able to as a group with our minds. This is an interesting case, actually, that is 2 years old now, but this is the famous brand Adidas that is now using AI before they launch products, where they can create products, they can create that A/B testing before they even launched it, and they can also send out in the thousands of inquiries before they even start producing the product. So AI is also enabling us to superpowers by giving us the tools that previously took a lot of time and a lot of effort and money. I'm going to go a little quicker so you get to see this. Of course, Lego is a Danish brand that you know that has been using AI for years, both in their product development process, but also in the way they interact with customers and invite them to build the next generation of Legos. So they're great. When it comes to Nike, why I think they're an amazing example to mention, a lot of people don't know that 1/4 of Nike's revenue comes from their digital channels. So if you're not able to start building capabilities to meet your consumer yet, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity. 7-Eleven, this is an old case, the bottom one. They launched AI in their stores in 2018, all their Thailand stores. And what's interesting is that while Europe was busy in getting afraid of GDPR and the complications of that, some parts of the world was really running through and utilizing that. And now this is their latest concept in Singapore, where they opened a beachfront. Of course, it's tech-enabled, but the point is that everything doesn't have to be AI. We need to understand the balance between the human and technology. And leaders must definitely change today to a mindset of wanting to learn, wanting to become better, evolve. So in this era where we have a lot of uncertainty, of course, visionaries in the companies play a role, but leaders that are able to build a platform, build a culture where the right questions or questions are being able to ask to find the right questions, that is the organization model that is the most prominent one. So while the future is agentic, of course, and while businesses are able to delegate more to AI to build that hyper-local capability that I mentioned earlier, those who will start on that journey already will take those steps. And for those people that were not aware what exponential growth was prior to ChatGPT, now we all know that from each version that is being launched, we see that there's some things that are opening up that we couldn't even imagine of before, like the nano bananas, now when we can create pictures that are just mind-blowing. And even though I've been talking about a lot of technology, I've been talking about AI, I've been talking about agents, I would like to share one short story with you before I end my conversation. And that is the power, the superpower of human touch. So in Los Angeles, there's a hotel that is number 2 on TripAdvisor. And in Los Angeles, where a lot of things are very pricey, the other ones are the 5-star ones, the ones that cost a couple of $100s a night. And this hotel is another one of those things I ask you to make a little note and try to read about it later. So what they became famous for, and are famous for until today, is their popsicle hotline. So, and people have gone crazy about this. They know that if they book that hotel, they can go down to the pool area, and you see the hotel. It's not a super fancy hotel. It's definitely not something close to what we have here in Dubai. But as soon as you lift the phone and say hello, within seconds, a person will come to you with a silver tray, white gloves, and offer you a popsicle. And this might sound a bit strange. It's just water and sugar. But the fact that they made their hospitality in the way that this is our thing. People can expect kindness in an era where everyone is competing for your attention, and people can really come back to us because they know that regardless of what we offer, we care about you as a human being. So with that said, my final words to you guys is, within this time where we have uncertainty, we have volatility, we have conflicts around the world, and now we have to juggle AI. Remember, the most important thing for consumers, essentially us as human beings, is how can we actually move forward, and how can we actually understand who am I in a time where I suddenly have a lot of tools and responsibilities that I need to be able to figure out how to use. Thank you very much for listening to me. If you'd like the presentation or just get in touch, feel free to scan the QR code and connect, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your show.